right, we're back. Chris Mannix, Sergio Mora. He is the fighter. I'm the writer. On the road again. I am in Oklahoma City this week. Sergio is back in Los Angeles. We will be reconvening together in New York next week. That's where Richardson Hitchens will defend his 140-pound title against George Kambosos. I know you, Sergio. You love a good trip to New York City, and your eyes lit up when I just told you that I had to move your flight up a day so you get in a little bit earlier to New York.
The city that never sleeps. What's not to love about New York City? I mean, it's a beautiful place where you can get a gyro or a gyro at 5 in the morning. Different ethnicities, always something to do. I love New York City. It was born. It's a city for the Latin snake.
Last time we went to New York, though, you went to Times Square. Like, who goes to Times Square when they get into New York City?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm a tourist at heart. I like seeing the things that everyone around the world goes to see. And once I see them, I take a picture of them and then I go to the grimy parts of New York. So those are the parts I don't share on social media, the grimy parts.
Right. All right. On this episode, we're going to talk about some more bizarre behavior from Teofimo Lopez, a rematch between Sebastian Fundora and Tim Tszyu, a pretty interesting 130-pound title fight between Keyshawn Davis, Keyshawn Davis fighting at 135. He's defending his titles at home. And O'Shaquie Foster is going to defend his title against Stephen Fulton at 130 pounds. That'll be Fulton moving up in weight. And a pretty solid heavyweight fight we've got here on DAZN in the UK on Saturday. But first, Sergio, we have to talk about the great Vasily Lomachenko. Loma officially announced his retirement on Wednesday at the age of 37. Not unexpected. Loma has not fought since May of last year and reportedly walked away from a Gervonta Davis fight because he didn't have the fire to go through a full training camp. Loma retires as arguably the greatest amateur in boxing history, finished his amateur career at an incredible 396-1. And that one loss he avenged twice. He is a two-time Olympic gold medalist. He is a three-division world champion. He is a longtime member of the pound-for-pound list who has been number one for a number of years. Sergio, how will you remember Vasily Lomachenko?
High tech, that's his nickname, right? But there has to be another name for it. I was thinking about the name while you were talking. Iconoclast, someone that did something we never seen before, that broke all the rules and got away with it. Something like that, because he was more than just gifted and talented. We saw that before with Roy Jones Jr. He was gifted, he was talented, he was strong. But Loma brought footwork to it. He brought finesse to it. He brought like a brutal symphony to that southpaw Ukrainian style. It was a beautiful thing to watch, especially from a fighter of that weight class with that pedigree. He's going to be incredibly missed, man, because this is a man not only that made guys quit, but found a way to beat down bigger fighters. Just what a great fighter and a future Hall of Famer. Salute to high-tech Lomachenko.
Yeah, I'm going to remember him as a guy that was never in a bad fight. I mean, look up and down the resume of Lomachenko and try to find too many obvious mismatches. Like in his first pro fight, he fought a fringy world title contender. That was his first pro fight. In his second pro fight, he lost because he fought Orlando Salido, who was a more experienced fighter, who was more physical than him, kind of took advantage of the fact that Loma didn't have a deep professional background at that point. In his third fight, he won a world title. He beat Gary Russell Jr. to win a world title in his third professional fight. That was peak Gary Russell Jr. at that time. All throughout his career, 126, 130, 135, he was fighting top 10 guys. He was fighting undefeated guys. He was fighting fellow champions. Like, if there wasn't a good fight to be in, Lomachenko did not want to be in it. Now, the disappointment, I think, for Lomachenko is that he never achieved undisputed status. He was, deprived of that in that narrow decision defeat to Devin Haney. Was looking for other big fights over the years. Couldn't make that happen for boxing politics. But this was a guy, Sergio, that maximized everything he possibly could in his boxing career. He is an all-time great. He will walk into that Hall of Fame on the first ballot.
And with every all-time great name, you always have a what if. What if these guys fought? We're going to get it with 126. What if he would have fought Mikey Garcia in his prime? What if he would have fought Shakur at 130? And of course, what if he would have fought Tank Davis? A fight that probably maybe should have happened earlier at 135. Never got to see it, but We don't need those three names to be talking about the great Lomachenko, Loma the Great.
Yeah, I forgot about the Mikey Garcia fight. That's another good one that will fall on the waste bin of boxing history of fights that we never got made. I'm glad Loma is retiring and not just coming back for another big payday. I mean, I think it's great when fighters recognize that they don't have it. And when you don't have it, you still fight for paychecks. That's when you get in trouble. That's when you take bad losses. That's when your legacy gets diminished to a certain degree. He's walking away on top. His last fight was a win, a world championship win over George Kambosos. And I do think we've seen the last of Vasily Lomachenko. All right, let's talk about Teofimo Lopez to go to the flip side of the boxing circuit. Teofimo, whose self-destruction appears to be complete. Last week, it was reported that Teofimo was on the verge of signing a lucrative deal to fight Devin Haney over in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. That deal stalled after Lopez made some questionable social media posts. Lopez apologized. The fight appeared to be back on, only to crumble again this week after Teofimo Lopez, from what I was told, just woke up one morning and decided that he didn't want the fight. I talked to Devin Haney this week. He said he's done with it. He's moving on. Sergio, we talk about ducks a lot here on the show. Is this an example of a duck?
You know, it's hard to call Teofimo Lopez a duck. We just finished talking about Vasily Lomachenko. Who's the man that fought him when no one wanted to fight him, when Lomachenko was still at his peak and beat him? That's Teofimo Lopez. So you can't call Teo a duck for doing this, especially since Haney's not a puncher. Haney is not someone that people consider as a devastating or scary opponent. Now, that's for the majority of people. But if you're Teofimo Lopez, and me and you always talk about this, what gives Teo issues? Movers, guys with a good jab, high fight IQ. So you can play both sides of the fences. Did he duck or didn't he duck? I'm gonna say no, because I think Teofimo's cut from the cloth of the guy who would fight anyone and can beat anyone when prepared and mentally there. Now, if he's not mentally there, then a guy like Haney can easily outbox him. So I wouldn't go as far as to say duck. Last time I said that Boots, when he didn't want to fight Virgil Ortiz, I said that it was kind of a faux gras. I'm not even gonna go there. I just think this didn't make sense in a business standpoint. It didn't make sense for him stylistically. And to be honest with you, Devin Haney didn't turn no heads in his last performance either. So what does it matter if he doesn't fight him next? Because Haney's not hot commodity right now. So I just think this was strategic and a business decision by Teofimo Lopez, not a duck.
I agree with you that Teofimo has earned some benefit of the doubt given his past willingness to fight anyone, anytime, anywhere. You're 100% right. He stepped in against Vasily Lomachenko to fight for the undisputed 135-pound championship, basically during COVID, for less money than he could have made if he had waited, fought somebody else, fought in a packed house, probably left 7 figures on the table, but wanted that fight, wanted to prove he was better than Lomachenko. That will always be the high point, at least to this point, of Teofimo Lopez's career. But it doesn't make business sense, Sergio, to pass on this fight. This was a Riyadh season card. I don't know what the exact numbers would have been for Teofimo to fight Devin Haney, but it would have been a career-high payday. There's no doubt about that. It would have been millions of dollars, low to mid 7 figures to fight Devin Haney. There's nothing smart business-wise about Teofimo Lopez walking away from this fight, because what is he walking to? Like, what is out there for him right now that makes any sense at 140 pounds? You're going to make a unification fight with Richardson Hitchens? If Hitchens beat Kambosos, like, good fight, not going to pay anywhere near as much as a fight against Devin Haney. And let's not forget, Teofimo was willing to go all the way to 147 to fight Boots Ennis. He had no problem with that fight. But when it came time to sign the contract to fight Devin Haney, he walked away from it. I think it is a duck. I think it's as simple as that. It is a decision by Teofimo to not fight Devin Haney for a big payday and a high visibility type of fight.
Nah, man, choose a different word. You're the writer. Break out your thesaurus. This isn't a duck. This isn't a duck. This is a business first. This is a business first. And Teofimo Lopez
What are you talking about? Why do you keep saying business first? Like, explain that. Like, why is this a good business decision for Teofimo Lopez?
Because Teofimo Lopez has made the right decisions at 135. He became undisputed at 140. He he knows his limits. I mean, when it comes down to it, when he's on point and he's mentally prepared, like he was in his last fight. His last fight, he probably was the best fighter out of all those names in Times Square. He probably looked the best. He didn't get the knockout, but he probably looked the best against a hell of a good fighter, undefeated fighter, in Barboza. I just think Teofimo moves and marches to the beat of his own drum, and it's an awkward, unorthodox drum, but that's what makes him special. All right, so I'm not going to begin to put myself in his shoes because he's just a little bit too
Yeah, but you
out
haven't
there.
explained you haven't answered my question. Why is this a good
I'm
business
getting
decision?
there.
Why?
I'm getting
why
there. I
is
let you
walking
talk.
away
Why is
from
this a
real
business
money?
decision?
You're filibustering. Answer the question.
Because he probably can't beat Devin Haney.
There it is. Now we're talking. Now we're getting to the root of the question.
And as a businessman, you're going to try to avoid guys that are going to make you look bad. You've seen it in history of boxing. You avoid certain fighters. I mean, look, the ultimate one that my fighter always talked about, Sugar Ray Leonard fought all those great names, right? All the monsters. But you never hear of Aaron Pryor. Why? Aaron Pryor was one of those guys that you didn't want to fight. Unorthodox, strong. He came from different angles. And there's plenty of examples down the history of boxing that I can continue giving you, but I don't have time. And you don't have the boxing knowledge to keep up. So to talk about this, wrong stylistically, man. That's it. Devin Haney's one of these guys that doesn't interact, doesn't exchange, moves around the ring. You see now he was a track star in his last fight. Can you imagine if Teofimo Lopez was in front of him? It just... Teo doesn't want to deal with that headache. That's it. That's all it is. And money comes second to this man's pride. All right, money doesn't.
Now we're doing the money comes second thing because you sing songs every single week about how this is prize fighting. About how it's all. But
we're talking about Teofimo Lopez, who's missing one or two screws, and everyone knows it. But that's what makes him a train wreck. That's what makes him fun to watch. What are we going to get? We're going to get the disaster, or we're going to get the brilliant marksman and artist. We don't know, and that's why we tune in. Right. Teofimo Lopez is a wild card. He's a joker, and we're all going to always be interested in guys like that. All right. If that man didn't want to fight Devin Haney, then watch and see who he picks next. If everyone's calling him a duck now, just you sit back, Chris Mannix, and watch who Teofimo fights next because he's going to surprise everybody. This dude's no duck.
He has alienated the guy with the biggest bankroll. Like, he has thoroughly alienated Turki Al-Sheikh, blowing up the fight once, now walking away from the fight for a second time. Turkey tends to march to the beat of his own drummer. Like, he could turn around and want to work with Teofimo again, but right now, that relationship does not look like it's in a good place. So if the man with the deepest pockets isn't interested in working with you, that's a problem for Teofimo Lopez, the businessman. Where you and I agree is that I don't think that Teofimo ever wanted a piece of Devin Haney. I think that he wanted a come-forward action fighter type of opponent. That's why he was willing to take the risk to move up in weight to fight Boots Ennis. I don't think that fight would have gone well for him. I think that would have gone really bad for Teofimo Lopez against a monster like Boots Ennis. But stylistically, that's the kind of guy that Teofimo looks for. He doesn't look for guys that fight like Sandor Martin did. He doesn't look for guys that fight like Jermaine Ortiz did. And Devin Haney is better than both of those guys. Even this maybe lesser version of Devin Haney, he is better than Martin and better than Jermaine Ortiz. And I don't think that Teofimo, regardless of the check, want any part of that. But I don't know what you call that. Like, avoiding? Do you want to just go down a list of adjectives to avoid the word duck? Like, no interest in, choose multiple words, whatever you want to call it. He didn't want to fight Devin Haney. It's as simple as that, Sergio.
He circumvented Devin Haney as a businessman and decided to go on another route financially. That's it. That's all it is. And you're gonna.
Well, he better hope there is another route financially. You better hope there is another one because.
Look, man. Do I call Teofimo Lopez brilliant? No. Do I call him a lot of things? No. We're talking about why he didn't want to fight Haney, and I just explained it to you, and how gifted he is as a boxer. I think it's stupid. I think it's immature for him to be insulting not only boxing fans and other boxers, but for him to go on record to be talking about the guy that's putting the biggest fights together with the biggest bankroll. That's suicidal. He's an idiot. We all know Teofimo Lopez can be an idiot, but when he's on point and he's motivated and he's hungry and something to prove, I think he's unstoppable, man. It's just, mentally, he struggles with himself. Let's just put it like that.
Well, his manager, Keith Conley, is going to have to earn his money over the next few months if he's going to put together a lucrative deal for Teofimo, because right now Teofimo is out there alienating a lot of people. He's already got a rocky relationship with his promoter, Top Rank. Now he's got issues with Turki Al-Sheikh. I guess you can do a Hitchens fight. I guess that's something, but I guarantee you the money for Richardson Hitchens is going to be a lot. And by the way, Richardson Hitchens is not an easy fight for Teofimo either.
Nope.
Richardson Hitchens is kind of a bigger version of Devin Haney. So
yeah, but Keith Conley will be, maneuvering. He represents both fighters, right? Conley Conley represents both Hitchens and Teofimo.
He doesn't want to put those guys in together, though. Like, rarely do you see two Keith Conley guys fight.
Well, look, man, I'm not going to call Teofimo a duck, but I'll tell you what, he should be, his mouth should be duct tape, because take his phone away and tape his mouth, because this man just needs to fight and shut up.
All right. On July 19th, Sergio, Manny Pacquiao will attempt to become a world champion once again at the age of 46 when he takes on Mario Barrios. In the co-main, though, Tim Tszyu will try to do the same thing when he takes on Sebastian Fundora in a rematch of a fight that Fundora won by split decision last March. Tszyu suffered a horrific cut on the top of his head in that fight. That loss started what was a downward spiral for Tim Tszyu. Saw him get knocked out by Bakram Murtsalayev in the next fight. Sergio, you have had a lot to say over the last 18 months about Tim Tszyu's matchmaking. What do you think about him running it back with Sebastian Fundora?
Man, you say that name, Bakram Murtsalayev, and it gives me chills, man, because it brings back the memories that I said and all the negativity that I brought to the great Tszyu name, and I stand by that, Chris Mannix. I stand by it. I think stylistically, going from Fundora to Murtsalayev, he picks up one win against who was it, Joey Spencer, and now back to the towering inferno. I don't like it. I'm gonna go back to what I said a year or two ago. I don't like it. Who the hell is the Tim Tszyu matchmaker? It's not a smart person, for one. It's not a guy that wants to focus and concentrate on his longevity. They're just taking the biggest and toughest fights, unknown fights, when there's names out there. Pick off a name. I mean, look at what Barrios is doing. He's picking off the biggest name in the last 15, 20 years, and Manny Pacquiao. You just got to pick out old names. I'd rather him fight a Keith Thurman, an inactive old Keith Thurman, than going back and getting a rematch against Fundora, a 6'6" southpaw. It's going to look exactly the same. The fight is going to look exactly the same. It was a competitive fight with or without that cut. And now that he has been knocked out, that he has been cut, he's not a top a prospect anymore. He's not a championship level fighter. He's damaged goods. Tim Tszyu is damaged goods, and he's only regressing and going backwards, picking the wrong style matchups. Man, I think it's foolish. I think it's career suicide, and he should not be fighting Fundora next. That's it. Yeah. That's my point.
I think it's inevitable that he has to get in again with Sebastian Fundora. He's got to try to right that wrong to get his career fully back on track. But I'm with you. I think this is too much too soon for Tim Tszyu. 2024 was a disaster. I mean, fighting that fight, like you talk about his matchmakers, I've said this many times, his corner did him an enormous disservice in that fight against Tim Tszyu by not stopping it inside the fourth round. If they had stopped the fight inside 4, it would have been a no contest. Tim Tszyu could have lived to fight another day. Instead, they let the fight continue. Tim Tszyu falls behind on the scorecards, and he has to fight, 90% of the fight, a bloody mess. And then they turn around and take on Bakram Murtsalayev. Like, I get it. You want to try to get your title back, but coming off a nasty cut like that, going right back in against the hard-hitting 154, like, Tim Tszyu's team is not doing him a lot of favors when it comes to this matchmaking. Now, going back to Australia, fighting Joey Spencer, that was smart, right? Fighting a guy at 154 that was just okay, getting a quality win. He looked good against Joey Spencer. He got the stoppage against Joey Spencer. The problem is he needs at least 1 or 2 more Joey Spencers. He needs another couple of fights before he gets back to this type of stage where he's fighting someone like Sebastian Fundora, who continues to improve as his career moves forward. I don't really know what happened between Tim Tszyu and Keith Thurman. Like, Keith Thurman goes over to Australia, knocks out Brock Jarvis. That seems like it sets up a huge fight between Thurman and Tszyu at 154 in Australia, that would have been the perfect fight for Tim Tszyu. A guy that's a big name, not a huge puncher at this weight, a little bit on the older side. Certainly a fight he could lose, Sergio, but one that he would be a favorite going into. Instead, he's going back to the U.S. He's fighting back against Sebastian Fundora in a fight that he's an underdog in. I think he's going to have a hard time winning this fight. I don't like this decision at all. I think he should have fought one or two more mid-level type fights, get that confidence back, continue to improve. Look, his head continues to be a stationary target. He continues to leave that head right in the middle where guys can just wail away on. I think this is a mistake to be doing this fight this quickly.
I wish our producer Adam can go back to just our last Tim Tszyu conversation, how you said the best should be fighting the best. This is a warrior, a champion who's in his 30s now. He should be fighting the absolute monsters out there. And what are we doing here? What are we doing here? That's your favorite line right there. And you want him to keep fighting these tough fights and coming back and getting hurt. He should right now consider the biggest names, because his career is not going to last that long. He already burned it at both sides. All right, the cuts, the knockdowns. I mean, he got knocked down half a dozen times against Mursaliev. You don't come back from that. Even though he picked up a quick win, your confidence is not going to get back. Once you get hurt again, it's going to remind you of that embarrassment, and you're not going to be the same fighter. Tim Tszyu will never be the exact same fighter. He reminds me, Chris Mannix, and I always go back to my bag of boxing here, of Virgil Ortiz. Oh, sorry. Virgil Ortiz when he fought Marcos Maidana. You know what? No, it wasn't Ortiz. Who was it? Yeah.
Virgil Ortiz.
Yeah.
Adrian Broner that fought Maidana.
No. But remember when Golden Boy had Virgil Ortiz. Victor Ortiz. That's why I'm getting them mixed up. Victor Ortiz. Remember Victor Ortiz, undefeated puncher, southpaw, and then they put him up against Marcos Maidana. His career was never the same. Because punchers need more than power. You know, they need more than power. They need upper body movement. They need footwork. This is a problem with Tim Tszyu. You say he leaves his head in the same place. He's not going to change that. That's his style. That's a Tszyu style. He's not going to get upper body movement. He's not going to find footwork all of a sudden. That's what it reminds me of. Victor Ortiz when he fought Maidana.
Victor Ortiz fight Maidana?
was never the same.
Victor fought Berto. Did he fight Maidana? I don't even remember.
He fought Maidana. Maidana's the first one that knocked him out and made him find a way out. That was the first time we've seen.
Oh, that's right.
Ortiz.
To his credit, Victor Ortiz bounced back a couple of times. There were a couple of times people counted Victor Ortiz out.
He bounced back against Berto. Never the same. He was never the same after the Maidana. He was never the same after Maidana, especially, and then he quit against Joselito Lopez, and I don't know, whatever. We're not going to get in that bag of tricks. So that's what happened with Tim Tszyu. He became a champion, didn't hold on to it long. He fought whoever the promoters put in front of him, but he didn't maximize like he should have.
Yeah, I'm a believer that Tim Tszyu can get back to being a world champion. That he can once again be a top 5 guy in the 154-pound division. I remember seeing improvements from Tim Tszyu over the last couple of years. I thought that Tony Harrison fight that he had was excellent. That was some of the best of Tim Tszyu. So I think there's real talent in there. There's obviously real power in there. But I think coming off the kind of year he had in 2024, just giving him one fight and one win against someone like Joey Spencer, I just don't think that's enough. I maybe we'll revisit this when this fight is over and Tim Tszyu makes us both look stupid, but I'm of the belief that Keith Thurman fight, that should have been a priority. They should have tried to put that fight together, make Tszyu against Thurman, and now you got Tszyu against Fundora. And if Fundora does to him, look, he beat him by decision, so he wouldn't like put a beating on him. But if Fundora beats him convincingly this time around, it's a hard one for Tim Tszyu to bounce back from at this stage, this age, this point of his career. So we'll see how that goes. All right, let's talk about Stephen Fulton, the WBC's 126-pound champion. Surprised a few people, Sergio, when he moved up in weight to defeat Brandon Figueroa several months back in a wide decision. He will try to do it again this summer, agreeing to a deal to face Oshaki Foster for Foster's 130-pound title. Fulton looked great against Figueroa. Do you like the decision to move up to 130 to challenge Foster?
Yeah, I like the decision. I mean, he has the height. He has a good right hand, and I think Oshaki Foster is an economical puncher. You know, one of those he fights inside that shell. And if you have a good right hand and good footwork, like Fulton does, I think he gives issues. So not only Oshaki Foster, but a lot of guys at 130. 130 is a division where you need a little bit of power, but you need more technique. These little guys throw a lot more punches, so technique is what you need. Fulton has the technique, but I think that fight will come down to athleticism and game plan. So I think him moving up in weight's fine. He'll be fine at 130. And like I say all the time, man, it's only a fighter knows. Only a fighter knows when he's ready to move up. I don't think you blame that monster in a way knockout on weight, on dehydration or coming down. I just think he maybe, one, he fought a great fighter, and two, he outgrew the weight class. He has the height, so I think 130 is going to be just fine.
Well, I mean, look, I agree with you on this fight, and I'll get to that. The fight before Fulton beat Figueroa, he did not look good. He looked average in that fight, and that's why I was so surprised that he looked that good against Figueroa. That was a nip and tuck fight when those two guys fought the first time at 122. Up at 126, that was a clean Stephen Fulton win. And what impressed me the most about Fulton in that fight is that he still had some of that sharp defense that he showed at 122, but he combined that with inside fighting. That was a new wrinkle to his game that we saw against Brandon Figueroa. And I think that fight was an example of a guy moving up in weight, gaining something from that, gaining strength from that, gaining something from not having to shrink down to 122. He just looked like a much fresher guy at 126, and I think that bodes well for the rest of his career. Look, going up to 130, it is a risk, but to me, it's a calculated one. I think a pretty good one. Like Fulton, I should say Foster, is probably the most vulnerable champion at 130. Maybe you say Navarrete is, maybe you say somebody else, but I think Foster is a vulnerable guy. He needed a KO a few years ago to beat Rocky Hernandez. He had a split decision win over Abraham Nova. He was life and death with two fights with Ropes and Conceição. So, I think he's there to potentially be beat. And if Fulton shows what he did in that Figueroa fight, where moving up in weight is good for him, where he can handle the power, where he can handle the physicality, because Foster is a physical guy. If he can show that he can handle that part of it, I think he can get a win. I think he can be a 3-division world champion this fight. To me, it's a coin flip. It's not I'm favoring Stephen Fulton by a ton, but I think this is a good risk to take if you can't get the kind of fight you're looking for at 126.
No, I agree. And that's because both these guys are economical punchers. You have Foster, who relies on that Philly shell. He hides behind the Mayweather, whatever you want to call it. But he's he's athletic enough, but the technique kind of fails him. So he does get hit, and that's the reason he gets beat in these fights, Foster. So I think he's talented. He's a champion, but he has to have the right style matchup. If you come with a game plan with a guy that keeps his arm down for the majority of the fight, relying on his natural gifts, you can break through that. A guy that's already once beaten in Fulton, he can actually do that if he comes with a game plan. If he doesn't throw combinations with him, he throws 2-1 combinations against a style like that. They're suckers for that punch. Stab to the gut. Don't exchange combinations with them. Fighters like Foster, who rely on that little roll, on that one punch, you can break that. You can outwork that. That's the reason he's been outworked. So I like the fact that Fulton is going up in weight, and think, I think he's going to be just fine against Foster. I don't like guys that do that style that's already been beaten. If you can have that style and beat some great names and maintain that undefeated record, or fight on the championship level and really get away with that defense, then fine, it suits you. But if you've already beaten not once, twice, but 3 times with that style, then there's a chink in that armor, and I think that Fulton will be able to expose it for a 4th time.
Yeah, look, it's also a low risk, high reward type of fight. Like if he loses to Oshaki Foster, he can still go back down in weight and be a world champion at 126. Look for a fight against Angelo Leo, maybe even Rafael Espinoza. We've talked about a Nick Ball fight before. I think that would be fun between Stephen Fulton and Nick Ball. I think again, calculated risk is how I would frame it. I think it's a good one for Stephen Fulton. All right, finally, over in the UK, Fabio Wardley, fresh off that first-round knockout win over Fraser Clark, he will take on Justis Huni in a homecoming fight for Fabio Wardley at home in Ipswich. That is a fight you can watch live on DAZN. Huni is a replacement for Jarrell Miller, who bowed out a little over a month ago. Wardley had the option to replace Miller with either Huni or Filip Hrgović? He chose Huni, who lacks experience, but has shown some good skill and some impressive power in some of his more recent wins. So let's start here. Did Wardley make the right call in choosing Justis Huni over Filip Hrgović?
Man, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. And I'm a fan of Fabio Wardley, especially after denting the head his last fight. I mean, he's a brutal puncher and he has a high ceiling. I would hate to have a bad performance or a loss or a hiccup against a tricky fighter. Huni has the amateur background. He has faster hands than Wardley. Wardley has the power. No doubt about it. Wardley has the power, but tricky guys like Huni, who are kind of upper body punchers, they're strong punchers, but they don't let you really get off, and he has a faster feet as well. And let's bring this to light. The elephant in the room. Beware the last minute replacement. We see it all the time when the last minute replacement goes into the hometown or near the hometown of a fighter. They don't look good, man. They do not look good. So I just think this is a recipe for something to get out of hand for a Fabio Wardley, a guy that is next in line in the heavyweight division. I think Huni's going to give him fits. I think Huni's going to give him a handful.
Yeah, it's kind of it fits every criteria that you've talked about for things to be careful of, right?
Yeah.
The late replacement. I know you hate hometown fights. This is going to be the biggest event that Fabio Wardley has had in his backyard. It is being billed as the homecoming, so there is a lot of pressure on him. I think they picked this fight because of the inexperience of Justis Huni. He has not fought close to this level up until this point. He's been largely a domestic fighter in Australia. And he's coming in against a guy that's slowly started to peak, I think, as a fighter. I mean, Fabio Wardley got off to a late start as a professional. I think he was 22 years old when he first turned pro. But over his last few fights, Sergio, I've liked what I've seen from him. He beats Nathan Gorman. That was a big domestic dust-up. He beats David Adelaide. That was another knockout on his resume. He's life and death with Fraser Clark in that first fight. He had a busted nose in that first fight, but then he goes out and he looks spectacular in that second fight, knocking out Clark with a first-round knockout, one punch, big dent on Fraser Clark's head. Just an impressive performance by Wardley. I think he's starting to come into his own as a heavyweight. I'm not going to sit here and say this guy's the next heavyweight champion of the world because I do think there's a ceiling on his talent, but I haven't seen enough of Justis Huni for me to believe that his talent's real either. Like, he's got, I think, 3 knockouts in a row. 3 of his last 4 fights have come by knockout, but he is not, I mean, he's been fighting low-level competition. And I go back, and I was watching the tape of his fight against Kevin Lerena. Won the decision in that fight, Sergio, but he got rocked in the 10th round. He almost got knocked out in the 10th round of that fight by Kevin Lerena. And I know Kevin Lorena's got some power. He's shown it against different guys over the years. But if Kevin Lerena has you on skates, almost has you beat, I think Fabio Wardley hits harder than Kevin Lerena. I think he's better than Kevin Lerena. And I think he's going to stop Justis Huni in this fight.
Well, you may have went back into the career of Justis Huni, but you didn't go way back to the amateurs. This was a successful amateur, a guy that could have made the Olympic team.
2019 world champion, bronze medalist.
Yeah, if it wasn't for 2020 and the whole pandemic thing. But this is a guy that had amateur pedigree, sees different style matchups, and for a guy that started late in boxing like Fabio Wardley and a lot of successful heavyweights that get a late start. The last thing you want to face, not only a last minute replacement in your hometown, we know that's already a recipe for disaster, but a guy with Olympic pedigree or close to Olympic pedigree with an amateur background. You do not want to face guys like that. They know how to box. They're quick with their hands, quick with their feet. And this is an opportunity of a lifetime for Huni. I'm not saying Wardley won't win, but this is going to be a very difficult fight. And I see him having issues. That's all I'm saying.
I can buy the idea that Huni is a better boxer because you're right. The amateur background speaks for itself. I don't think he's been in with a puncher like Fabio Wardley. And when I went back and watched that Lerena fight, he was hurt earlier in the fight, and then he got really hurt in the 10th round of that fight. And I think Wardley's going to find a way to catch him with that same right hand that put Fraser Clark down. I think Wardley, he didn't look great in that first fight against Clark, had that busted nose, but I think he's improved since then. I think he's a better fighter. He's got more power. I think he wins this fight by knockout. Are you actually, just so we're clear, are you actually picking Justis Huni to win?
Just like when I picked against Navarrete, remember Suarez? It was what, 6-7 to 1. This probably
Mm,
be around the same level. I
maybe
think
more.
if,
Maybe more.
if there's an over under, I will go over. I think Huni gives them that many fits. It might even go the distance or a late round stoppage, but Huni's going to give him fits. He's going to win rounds, but I'm not going to pick Huni to win.
All right. All right. So you're picking like over 8.5 is what you'd say in this fight.
I would go 8.5, maybe even 9. And by the way, to all our listeners on the Mora and Mannix show, you still owe me that bow because Oscar Suarez did not win that. I mean, Oscar Suarez did not lose that fight.
Keep trying again.
Navarrete
His
did not
name's
lose that
not
fight. So you
Oscar
need to
Suarez.
bow,
Get his
Chris
name
Mannix.
right. His
Bow
name's
to
not
boxing
Oscar
royalty and
Suarez.
Sergio Mora.
His name is Charlie Suarez. Get it right, okay? Not Oscar. And he didn't win. It wasn't overturned to a win. It was overturned to a no contest. So there'll be no bowing here to you, to your.
Give me half a bow. Give me a salute. Give me some kind of respect because that was a big underdog pick. There you go. Thank you, Chris Mannix.
I
That was
salute
a
you,
good one on my part.
Sergio Mora, and I will see you in New York.